morning. I guess we're on the cusp of afternoon, so good morning and a preview to the afternoon. Before I begin our presentations, I just want to mention that at each of your place settings is a little bundle of materials that we hope you'll take with you. There's a couple things that's in here later, but there's a lot of great information about some of the efforts we've done in the city of Toledo legislatively to have city council, county commissioners, the mayor's office endorsing some of the things, the projects we're going to talk about. And then for fun, if you want, it's optional, but we've got tote bags that we hand out during the biggest week of American Birding. There's some good swag in here, I must say. So please help yourself. Our goal would be not to go back with any, so if you want to take two, that would be great. There's a visitor's guide that's in there from last year. I'm going to mention that. It'll give you a really good idea of what that magazine looks like and how we promote cooperating businesses and buildings in that magazine. So, with that, thank you so much. What an incredible opportunity to talk to building and owners and managers about birds. In my 25-plus year career, when I started, I never thought that I would be talking to people other than birders about birds and birding. So this is really amazing, and I'm so grateful to you. Particularly, I wanted to thank Yvette. Thank you so much for meeting with my colleagues and I last year and for making this meeting presentation. We hope that you'll enjoy this presentation. It's a wonderful mix of nonprofit organizations, our metro parks, which are, I can tell you, I've traveled all over the world visiting birding destinations and metro parks. I know you already know this, but the Toledo metro parks are the finest metro parks anywhere in the country. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Ottawa National Wildlife Refuge, and then a local company that's based out of Toledo that's playing a major role in this. So we'll just get started. So I'm going to focus on birding tourism and how our organization, Black Swamp Bird Migratory, I'm really talking, by the way. I didn't even introduce myself, I don't think. I'm the executive director of Black Swamp Bird Migratory. We're based about 15 miles east of here, right inside the entrance to Mickey Marsh. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We're independent from the wildlife agencies, and we're funded by members, donors, and grants. We have been around for a long time, more than 30 years. And we are at the entrance to McGee Marsh. Our neighbors are McGee Marsh Wildlife Area. That's the state wildlife agency. And right next door are our neighbors at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Ottawa National Wildlife Refuge. The organization, Black Swamp, has been conducting migratory bird research in this region for more than 30 years. The organization was founded around research projects. And that detailed information about migratory birds, the timing of arrival, the timing of migration, really lends itself to our marketing efforts. And we also have a commitment to keeping kids connected with nature. These are the land stewards of the future, and we're very proud as a nonprofit to provide really dynamic, curriculum-based school programs at no charge to the schools. And we are dedicated, our overarching goal is habitat conservation, and the Bird Observatory works with many different partners to address the most serious threats on birds. But I think maybe what we're best at is connecting people of all ages with the joys of birds and birding. Do we have any birders in the room today? Anybody that goes out and looks at birds or photographs birds? Not counting my staff and colleagues. Well, no hands went up. I accept your challenge. Yes, thank you. We have one birder who raised his hand, so hopefully you'll come away with a little bit more awareness of how cool birds are and what a magical place Northwest Ohio is for migratory birds and for birders. And the way we connect people with birds on a grand scale is during our spring festival, the biggest week in American Birding. This is a 10-day festival, because we're hardcore. We go all the way. It's headquartered right here at Maumee Bay Lodge. This is the perfect place to headquarter a festival of this magnitude. We are celebrating our 15th year, but within the 4th year, from 2010, in 4 years, it was the biggest birding festival in the entire country. And it now represents one of the largest, if not the largest, gathering of birders anywhere in the world. Yes. And we are really proud to be one of the catalysts for creating a birding So if none of you are really actively birding, perhaps you've never been to the boardwalk at McGee Marsh Wildlife Area. Have any of you ever tread these amazing boards? Okay, good, a few of you, but a goal of yours should be to go out sometime soon and look at how, the peace and solitude of this place. This is about 15 miles east. This boardwalk transects a woodlot that's right on the lake shore. This is prime habitat for migratory birds, and it's a public area. It allows us to immerse birders from all over the world in the spring migration experience that's better than anywhere else on the continent. If you went out there today, this is what this stretch of boardwalk, it's about a mile-long boardwalk, it makes a loop. That's what it might look like today. Any given day in May, that's what it looks like.
Oh, wow.
And this event really has transformed Northwest Ohio and changed the culture of our region. When we started our efforts to market, really there was nothing formal going on in terms of marketing this area to birders. So around 2006, the Bird Observatory says, we have an opportunity. We are traveling birders ourselves. We have detailed knowledge about bird migration. We are traveling birders. We know what this audience wants. So these are people from all over the world. You will hear every language being spoken. A lot of people don't speak English, but they're speaking the universal language of birding. And there's just a really joyful vibe that infuses this event. So I'm not going to go too far into this, but just a few more details about why birders are here. More than 350 different kinds of birds have been documented in Northwest Ohio, but these are the warblers. You've maybe heard our tagline, the warbler capital of the world. Of all the different birds that pass through here, these are the birds that people come from all over the world to see. If you spend enough time during spring migration, you can see about 37 different species of warblers. These are tiny birds. They weigh less than an ounce. They're incredibly colorful. And here in Northwest Ohio, on their stopover habitat, which my colleague Jay is going to talk more about, they're more accessible, more visible than anywhere else in their life cycle. And they're along public areas, so again, we can immerse birders. So these are the stars of the show, if you will, these little warblers. But the truth is, migratory birds have been passing through this area for millennia. And these public areas have been here, most of them, for decades. It wasn't until our little organization with a staff of less than 10 put together a real marketing strategy, not just to market birders in this region of the Midwest or this country, but internationally. We had that kind of reach. And I'm just going to do a romp through these. We needed a tagline. If we can be the walleye capital of the world, we thought, why not the warbler capital of the world? So we started promoting this tagline, and as we're traveling, my husband and I were in Peru, and we mentioned that we were from Northwest Ohio, and they said, the warbler capital of the world. Someone in Peru had heard our tagline, so that felt like a real win. There really were no birder services, so our team built a whole suite of free birder services so that once we had their attention, we had lots of great quality materials to put in their hands. And then, I'm not going to go clear through this slide, but the nuances of the experience of spring migration here are something that we've marketed. The fact that it's early enough in the season that there are no bugs, the leaves haven't fully come out, and by the time the birds get to this latitude, the males are singing. So you have this experience of what's called a dawn song. So not only are the birds beautiful, but they're singing these incredible, it's like a symphony of bird song out there. So all of these things are points that we've woven into our marketing efforts. And we've been pretty successful. Each spring, about 90,000 people travel to Northwest Ohio to experience birding here. That number dipped a bit during COVID, but it's rapidly coming back. We had festival registrants from every state. Last year it was, what was the state? Was it North Dakota? South Dakota. Come on, South Dakota. Last year, in 2024, we had registrants from every state except South Dakota. So if you go there, let them have it. More than 50 countries and 6 continents. And I always joke that if you have friends that live in Antarctica, if you can have them register for the biggest week, we would like to fill in that gap on our data. And we really are dedicated to trying to leverage the economic impact to open doors to people like you, to our elected officials and decision makers, so that they understand the economic benefit, not just the biological impact of habitat conservation. So when the biggest week wraps up, my staff doesn't rest. We send out a post-event economic impact and travel study. We share this data with our friends at the Convention and Visitors Bureau, so it's really impactful data. And it's been a while, since 2016, or maybe even earlier, since we did a deep dive on the analysis of this data. The cool thing about our organization is we're a research organization. The statistical analysis software that we have to crunch bird data works for any kind of data. So we did our own in-house economic analysis, economic impact analysis. We ran our formula past lots of experts in the field and they approved it. In 2016, when there were just 70,000 visitors coming, the annual economic impact was in excess of $40 million. That's every spring. And honestly, we have a multiple choice question. We took the low end average of the answer to how much did you spend on your trip to Ohio on lodging, gas, food, and shopping. So it really could conceivably be much higher than that. And this is an important detail, but much of this occurs during what the tourism folks consider the shoulder season, the slow season for tourism. These efforts have created a birding tourism industry that just simply didn't exist before we started the biggest week. It's extended that tourism season by a full month. Small businesses that weren't opening until June are now opening a full month or a month and a half early, and it's really having a major impact on small businesses, which we're very proud of. I'm working with the Visitors Bureaus now to try to come up with some tax-based data, just to see what visiting birders are putting into the tax base as well. But again, the bottom line is habitat conservation, and I think now you get the idea that birding is a tremendous revenue. It has a tremendous positive impact on Northwest Ohio, but it does come with a responsibility for all of us to find ways to work together, building owners and managers like you and many others, to make sure that the passage for migratory birds is as safe as we can possibly make it. And to take a bit deeper dive into migration, I'd like you to help me welcome from Metro Parks Toledo, the Director of Conservation Science, Jay Wright.
Thanks, Kim. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about bird migration, why they're here, some of the dangers they face, and this is going to kind of segue into the Lights Out program that we have, and some of the information where you guys come in with the buildings. So, by now I think we all know the birds migrate. It's not all birds. So some birds, obviously we have birds here year-round, resident birds, but quite a few birds in North America that we have during the breeding season or during migration, they don't stay here. So they're up here for part of the year, and then they move either through Ohio and then south into Central or South America for the overwintering or the non-breeding season. And so here in Northwest Ohio, we're kind of uniquely located in these convergence of flyways. So, we have birds these migratory birds nest all across the Canada and North America, but there's particular flyways based on how the landscape is. So with the Great Lakes region, the Appalachian Mountains, some of the prairie land that doesn't have as much habitat for forest. So there are these flyways where birds come together. We have the Atlantic Flyway, the Mississippi Flyway, and the Central Flyway. And because of how the continent is arranged, they kind of funnel through this area of the Great Lakes. And in particular, Northwest Ohio is kind of this convergence area. So there's a lot of high numbers of birds and species moving through this region. But one of the things that birds are doing when they're migrating is feeding on the land. So basically these birds are migrating long distance, so anywhere from 100 to 400, 500, 600 miles in a single flight, sometimes even longer than that. And so when they're on the ground, they need to eat a lot. So they need to build up all this fat. They need a lot of insects, so they need protein-heavy and fat-heavy things to eat. Lake Erie, the shores of Lake Erie are a really important spot for that. So we have in May these emergence of aquatic invertebrates, like you can see on the leaves here. So it's a high, abundant food resource for migrating birds. So that's part of the reason that they're using this area so much. And just to take a kind of zoomed out view of what the region looks like, we have some really great habitat, as Kim mentioned. So we have all these public lands along the shore of Lake Erie that are protected, that are really good habitat for refueling during migration. We also, on the west side of the county, we have that oak openings region, that forested area there. Lots of really good habitat there for refueling. You need a lot of caterpillars and flying insects and all this stuff. So we do have some really great habitat going on in this region for that. But migration is a really dangerous time for birds. So this figure on the left is just one example of a species, and there's multiple studies that show this. Basically, we're looking at the mortality rate, and then the breakdown of age, and then basically at different times of the year when are birds dying. And so what we're seeing in the red bar and the green bar are the fall migration and the spring migration. So pretty much most migratory birds are dying during migration because it's such a difficult time. So think about what they're doing. So they have a daily challenge of finding enough food, enough fuel to go another multiple hundred miles, and they're these tiny little birds. So they're also doing this. They're moving every day or most days, and they're doing this in areas they're unfamiliar with. So on the stationary breeding grounds, they have a territory, so they're very familiar with where they can find food. When they're migrating, it's just like they land somewhere and they've got to find food. And so they're just looking all over the place, and they might land in an area that's no good for them. And so it's really tough. There's also a lot of natural hazards during migration, so there's all kinds of predators out there that are looking for a snack. These little birds are, really nice bite-sized snack for lots of frogs and falcons and other kinds of predators. There's, as you're going thousands of miles during migration, there's going to be severe weather events, hurricanes, ice storms, things like that pop up. So they have to navigate severe weather. And then there's also a lot of landscape obstacles. So if we just take another look at what we have here, Lake Erie is a great resource for them in terms of the shores and where they can forage, but they have to get across Lake Erie or go around it. So there's nowhere they can land on Lake Erie. So Lake Erie itself is an obstacle for migration. Also, if we take another look at the landscape, yes, we do have a lot of great habitat, but what is that in the middle of? A lot of ag. Farmland, cropland is basically a desert for migrating birds. There's very few species that can find food in cropland. So, this is kind of almost like just crossing a big lake, having to cross this farmland because there are very few places where they can eat. Also, take a look, Toledo. It's an urban area. There's a lot of parking lots, buildings, things like that. It doesn't have habitat, so there's not habitat everywhere, right? So there's all these obstacles. They have to find these little pieces of habitat that still exist. So even though we have some stuff going on, we also have a lot of, at a landscape scale, problems with having enough habitat to provide food for all these birds. So those are some of the natural kind of hazards that exist, but there's also a lot of human-caused, like directly human-caused mortalities that birds face during migration. So this figure, I always like to show this just to really get the scale of how big a problem some of these things are. So cats, outdoor cats, are the #1 killer of birds worldwide. These numbers, this is just the United States. So a study, and a couple of studies now have shown that at a minimum, over 1 or 2 billion birds every year in this country are killed by outdoor cats. So I'm not gonna get into cats more than that, but just know that outdoor cats and feral cat colonies are a big problem for birds and wildlife. They're an invasive species that is responsible for more extinctions, like recent extinctions than anything else, especially on the island of Hawaii. All right, so now we'll get to where you guys come in. Building collisions is kind of the second biggest problem, unfortunately, with migrating birds. And the estimates are from anywhere from 600 million to over 1 billion birds killed by building collisions countrywide. So that includes, not just high-rises, but that's, residences, 1 to 3 story buildings, high-rises, any kind of building. Altogether, it's, between 600 and 1 billion birds a year are killed. And, that number is high, and you're like, well, how many birds are there out there, really? Well, a recent study has found that we've lost about 3 billion birds in the last 50 years, and that's a significant portion of most of the birds' population. So one example, the Baltimore Oriole here, Comparing the population size to 1970, now we have lost 2 in every 5 Baltimore Orioles. They're just no longer out there because there's not enough habitat left, there's all these hazards, there's more urbanization, more cropland. So it's getting harder and harder to support all these bird populations. A little bit of doom and gloom there, but that's why we exist, and that's why we're kind of trying to partner together to make things better for birds. So I want to get into a little bit about why building collisions are a problem. So there's 2 main issues. There's artificial light, and then there's glass and windows. So with artificial light, I don't think I mentioned before, but most of these birds are migrating at night. So you may not know that, but a lot of birds, they wait until the evening after sunset, about an hour or 2, then they come up, and that's when they're doing most of their flying. So they're flying during night, and if you have sky glow and a lot of artificial light, that kind of interrupts their normal navigation behavior and their navigational functions for migrating. We don't really understand why, but there are multiple studies that have shown and proven that birds are, for some reason, drawn into areas that have sky glow. So like city centers where there's like, bright lights pointing up at the buildings or emanating from rooms and windows, that tends to draw birds in. Unfortunately, they're being drawn into where there's not really any habitat, right? So a city center is not a good place for a bird to find lots of food and caterpillars and things like that. We also get this issue where birds become confused and disoriented once they arrive in these areas. They don't really know where to land. They're not really processing what's going on with all these lights in these buildings. So sometimes they'll fly around for a while until they're exhausted and collapse. That exposes them to predation from cats, from raccoons, from hawks, anything, because they no longer have the energy to get away from predators. So that's kind of the issue with artificial light. So we want to try and make cities darker, actually, during migration anyway. The other issue is glass. So there's 2 issues with this. There's reflectivity of glass. So if you have reflective windows or reflective glass surfaces, that basically what the bird is seeing is whatever's reflected in the glass, right? So if you have shrubs or trees or just sky that's being reflected in the glass, they don't process that. They're trying to go to what they see in there, and so they end up colliding with the windows that way. Transparency. So if you have glass that's maybe not reflected, but you can see through it really well, they just see what's on the other side. So this is an issue with like walkways and things like that, where they might just see sky, or maybe they see trees through the glass, and they think, oh, I'll just go right through there, and then they hit the glass. So those are kind of the 2 big problems with glass. Even though it looks really great on buildings, it is a big problem for birds, especially migrating birds. Even small windows or gaps in glass can be an issue. Because think about these birds breed, and their kind of natural habitat is mostly forest. So they're used to flying through leaf openings and twigs and really small areas. So, even if you have a small window, they might think they can kind of go through there, get in there. I'll just bring this up quickly. Maybe some of you saw in the news last year, this building in Chicago, McCormick Place, had a disastrous event where in a single night, almost 1,000 birds collided with the building and died. So this is all these birds laid out on the table. These are the species that were most impacted. Most of them were warblers. So that was a somewhat unique situation, but it's not something that's impossible or out of the ordinary. So, there can be these really bad events where a bunch of birds hit a building all in the same night. Usually it's not like that, but it's pretty regular occurrence to have, several or multiple or a couple dozen birds hitting a single building. So that can be a big problem.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are cities trying to do something about that, and is especially like Toledo trying to do something with their?
That's a great question. I can't believe that's like so perfectly fits into my next slide. Yeah, so the name of most of these the city efforts that are trying to address this, a lot of them are called Lights Out programs. We also are working with like bird friendly or bird safe programs. So here we have Bird Friendly Toledo and Lights Out Toledo as a part of that. And yeah, so there's a statewide effort that's run by the Ohio Bird Conservation Initiative called Ohio Lights Out. And within that, there are 6 different programs. Basically, all the major city centers have some form of a Lights Out program. It's trying to work with building owners to turn their lights off, make the city darker, at least when the migrant birds are going to be passing through. And then the next step is trying to get to the windows and glass. So just kind of a little bit more detail. So the goal of the Lights Out program is to reduce artificial light as much as possible in city centers, so we're not drawing birds in to those areas anymore. And then really the next step that is a harder step to do because it's associated with a higher cost for buildings is making windows and glass birds safe. So there's a variety of options for this. Jessica and Tony are going to talk more about those options and how that works. But just as an example, a typical pretty effective treatment is just dots on the outside of the window that are at like a 2 by 2 inch spacing. You'll see that afterward downstairs. The Maumee Bay Lodge has done part of their building in this. So some other local buildings that have done this, the Ottawa Refuge Visitors Center, the McGee Marsh Visitors Center, our Glass City Metro Park, our new buildings that we're putting in there have these dots. The One Government Center, the walkway from the parking lot to the building has done this with these dots. So we're starting to get more participation in this, and this is really starting to grow kind of nationwide, but also here locally. So that's kind of the straightforward solution: is get as many lights off as possible and as many windows treated as possible to make them safer. And that's what I have. So next will be Jessica Duez from, oh yeah.
I think it's important too to clarify, I was under the misperception that one Seagate, I am a glowing tower in the middle of the night for every bird to come through and collide into the building. But from what you were sharing earlier, it's really floors 1 through 3 are all lower. So if you think you're not affected, I guess is what I'm saying. If you have a low-rise building with windows, it's as important to you as it is to someone that manages a tower like I do.
Thank you. Yeah, so a lot of the majority, I mean not all, but the majority of collisions typically happen in the lower stories because that's where there's usually more habitat reflected, so trees or things like that. I mean, sky reflection can also be an issue, and it's certainly at the McCormick Place instance, birds were hitting all over. So it can happen at upper floors, but the kind of biggest problem areas are typically the lower floors. Yeah.
Just so I understand what you just said, which is crazy. How big are these birds?
Yeah, they're basically,
They're adorable.
yeah, they're really bright. They're like little gems that fly around. I mean, they're
And then
bright.
how far can they fly one at once?
So one instance, so the blackpoll warbler sometimes will fly from if they're over on the East Coast, like in Maine, sometimes, and there's records where they have a tag on them, so we know exactly. They leave the Maine coast, they fly over the entire Atlantic Ocean down to Brazil. So it's like migration to allow that to happen, and the refueling. So they have to build up a bunch of fat. So when you catch birds that are about to make a long distance flight, there are these like butterballs just completely full of fat because they have to burn all that on those really long flight trips.
Wow.
And I mean they're not always that long, but a very normal amount is like 300-400 miles a night.
You said a night?
Yeah.
Unless they're going to Brazil. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so give Jessica a
Thank you, Jay. So again, my name is Jessica Duez. I am a wetland technician with the Friends of Ottawa National Wildlife Refuge. Just a little background, I started at the refuge in 2021. The first big project I worked on was making our buildings bird friendly. This is part of the Fish and Wildlife Service's 3 Billion Bird Challenge. So like Jay mentioned earlier, we've lost 3 billion birds since 1970. So this is really their strategy to try and slow the decline of bird populations by addressing one of the major threats that birds face, which we've heard now is glass. So what we meant by bird friendly was reducing collisions, and doing this by doing 3 different things. Reducing the reflectivity of glass, reducing the artificial lighting, and then also doing outreach and education, educating the public about why collisions are happening and what we can do to try and reduce bird deaths from collisions. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. On our building, we did a lot of different retrofits. We weren't ready to replace our glass with bird-safe glass. That is an option, but we went ahead and did retrofits. So This is one-way film. This is one of my favorite things that we did. You're able to do print anything really that you want on this film. So our Rookery Nature Store did a little design down there. We were able to print pictures. We have about 26 different warbler pictures all over our buildings. And it's one of my favorite things that we did because it's just really aesthetically pleasing. We also use features like dots and tape. Tony's going to talk a little bit more about dots after me. Decals, we make these ourselves. Zen curtains, which are strings, paracord strings that hang over the windows, about 2-inch spacing. And temperature paint. So this is a non-toxic washable paint. So anywhere where we had overhangs where our windows were protected from any rain, we were able to have kids and volunteers come out, paint murals on our glass. It's not permanent. This can be replaced. It does fade. So every few years we've had them replaced, and people can come out and paint new murals on our windows. So this is the front view of our building. I'm really proud of what we've done, and we've had nothing but compliments from visitors that come to visit the refuge. They say that the building is really beautiful with all of the artwork on them. But like Jay said, we're not the only ones doing these projects. We're here for a reason at the Maumee Lodge. McGee Marsh, our neighbors next door, have used bird-safe glass in their newly renovated visitor center. So it's a growing movement. And it's an exciting time, and it's something that you guys can be a part of too. So we also enrolled the visitor center in the Lights Out program. As we've heard, it's a very important part of reducing collisions, and started a collision monitoring program, which is what I'm really here to talk to you about today. We call ourselves the Glass City Bird Crew. So there are programs all across the world, these collision monitoring programs that are led by a variety of different organizations, from college universities to nonprofits, and we all have the same goal of reducing collisions by documenting the collisions that are happening and advocating for bird-friendly building design and reducing artificial lighting. Like many other collision monitoring programs, we head out in peak spring and fall migration, so we're out there every day in April and May, and then again in September and October. And we're out from 7 to 9 in the morning. And when I say we, I mean it's just a small group of volunteers led by someone from one of the partner organizations, myself included. If we find a bird, what we do is we take the GPS location, we document the bird species, the condition, so if it's dead or injured, and then date and time. If we are able to catch an injured bird, it does go to Nature's Nursery, a local rehab center here. And about 90% of the birds that we've taken are able to be released after treatment. But unfortunately, 68% of the birds that we find are already dead when we find them. So 2 out of 3 of the birds that we find have already passed away. So since we started the collision monitoring program in October of 2022, we found almost 1,000 birds. And that's not the whole picture. We're not able to find every bird that hits the glass. Scavengers come by and pick them up before we can find them. Some birds fall onto rooftops or windowsills, ledges. We've talked to a lot of maintenance guys when we're out there, and they say that there's birds all over the rooftop. And they never make it to the ground, so we can't document those. And then also, some of the birds fly off after they hit glass. Not every bird that hits the glass is going to die immediately. Or just sit under the glass and fly off. But we do know about 70% of birds that hit glass and fly off do succumb to their injuries and will die later. So looking at this graph, this is the percentage of bird strikes in downtown Toledo by family group. So out of the 1,000 birds that we found, 29% are in the sparrow family. And that includes birds like the white-throated sparrow. This is the most common bird species that we find. 21% are warblers. This is a common yellowthroat. And 8% are thrushes. So this is a hermit thrush. So just in these 3 bird families, it accounts for over 50% of the birds we're finding. And that is very significant for our area. And as Kim has said, people come here from all across the world to see warblers. And sparrows and thrushes are included in that. These are beautiful birds, and a lot of people travel here just to come see them. So how can the data that we collect when we're down there doing the collision monitoring program be useful to you if you're a building owner or a manager? One of the most useful things I think that we can do with the data is make these heat maps. Heat maps are visual representations of data that use color to show patterns and density. I made this mock heat map of the Refuge Visitor Center. I just made up some data points. I didn't really want to use a real example of anybody's building downtown because we do really take your privacy very seriously. So I just created this one. If you look at the legend at the top where it's more blue and the purple, that's sparse areas of collisions. And as collisions increase, we get down into that yellow color. So for example, if this was your building, we'd show you this heat map and say, your northeast facade here seems to be the area with the highest amount of collisions. And maybe even this southeast corner as well has a lot of collisions. But this west side over here doesn't really have, I mean, at least we haven't documented a lot of collisions on that part of your building. So I think this can be a really useful tool for you if you do feel like you want to treat your glass. We don't have to go through and treat every square inch of your glass. We can have these pinpointed hot spots that we can focus on, and you can get kind of the best bang for your buck and treat a smaller area with less money, but reduce a lot of collisions that way. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tony with review thinking.
And we are based out of Toledo, Ann Arbor, Cleveland, and Columbus. Summer will be my 40th year in the window film and glass coating industry. I was first made aware of the solutions for bird strikes by a local school, Maumee Valley Country Day. About 10 years ago, their students were very concerned about all the glass on campus and the windows that were attracting the birds and causing strikes. So they came up with their own solution, and actually Jessica touched on it, the one-way film. It's actually a perforated film, kind of signage material. A lot of you see it on buildings and cars and buses. That's what they decided to go with, and they just did white on the outside, and it worked great. Started to trickle in after that when we were getting into bird sanctuaries, and a lot of homeowners actually were very concerned as well. But for the film that's out today, there's a large amount of manufacturers that are manufacturing different styles. But the big thing about it is the bird perceives reflections through the glass, but the glass itself is often invisible to the bird, correct? They think that they can land on the tree. They think that they can fly in and land into the building, or the reflection is something that's attracting them. The bird film acts as a cue to basically let them know that there's something there to divert their path. Now, one of the big things that we have found, there are different glass manufacturers that have manufactured bird glass. The perfect bird glass is what the Metro Parks have, the Marsh has, where the dots are on the outside, pane 1 of the window. If it's in between the glass or installed on the interior, the birds will not see the dot. They'll still see the reflection and they'll collide with the glass. Basically going off of what we have here. So if it's on the inside, it's going to be dull, they're not going to see it. So we definitely want to make sure that if you're doing any type of film, it's being installed in the exterior, because that's what's going to actually work. This is an example of some work we did last spring. These are the straight lines, dots that are done here. Great for block style windows, block style buildings. And then we have the offset, which was done at the Metro Park Pavilion off of Front Street. That building obviously more angled glass. This works a lot better with that style of building. Now you don't have to do just dots. This is actually the skywalkway at One Government Center that we did last fall. And when we were there doing the quote, we actually were seeing birds hit the glass while we were there doing the quote. You can see they actually tried to put their own little dots on there. Didn't work. You really need to have that coverage where it's a 2-inch distance between the dots and the lines so that you're getting that visual to the birds. Kind of what Jay said, if there's a smaller hole, they're going to try and fly into it. So you really want to make sure you're getting the coverage there. Different style dots. Again, another manufacturer. This is actually a SolarGuard product. And SolarGuard manufactures not only the dots, but different style of lines. We've even seen some different trellis style materials. The thing about this type of material is it is a solid piece of film that's trying to cover the entire window. And the problem with that is it's going to last for about 4 years and look good for maybe 4 or 5. After that, that whole piece of exterior material is going to start to peel, maybe bubble, discolor, turn yellow, not look great. So we have chosen to stay away from this style unless it's something that's going on in a building where the people do plan on replacing their glass in a few years. That may be something that works. The approved colors that we found, black, white, orange, and yellow. We're actually going to be trying brown out here as well, because we found that a lot of customers like brown because it matches the anodized framing of their buildings. The dots, when they're put up, go back to the ones. When they're put up, the nice part about the dots is they're individual dots. They're applied with transfer paper. This is something that a sign company could do for you. You know, if you have small windows, it's something that you could have done very easily. There's lots of places to get the materials. It's not like you're just going to one source and you're stuck with one style. So you can fit different building structures to different styles and materials to really blend it and make it look aesthetically pleasing for yourself. But again, the reason why I like the dots is because you can get a 7 to 10 year warranty out of the vinyl on glass, and it's still going to be up there probably 12 to 15 years later, versus the solid film that would go on and eventually be peeling and flapping off, and you're really not getting your money's worth out of it. Going back to the bird-to-bird material, this is a newer material. It's been out on the market about 2 years. It is a clear material, and it really does look pretty much like the slide on the left. To the birds, it's supposed to look like what's on the right. I'm showing you this because it was just done in the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse in Cleveland. They did the entire building with this. We're still seeing some collisions over there, so I'm not 100% of this product, but it does better than nothing. And aesthetically, it looks like there's nothing on the window until you get right next to it. Now inside looking out, it almost looks like there's a lot of raindrops on your window, unfortunately. So from the inside view, it does look a little bit different. Again, this is something that it's not rocket science to install. This is something that even your facility guys or your maintenance crews can install things like this very easily. You don't have to have someone like me come out and do this, although I would love to do it. But it's something that you can order it online, get it put up very easily, cost effectively for your buildings. And that's really all I have. And if you want any more information about the products that we're carrying, you can scan that there. We do have a couple in the back. One thing that I can say about what we're doing, we're manufacturing the product here in Northwest Ohio. So instead of buying something out of Canada or buying something out of Texas or buying something out of New Jersey, we're bringing the price down, and actually we're able to sell and install the material for just about what other manufacturers are selling it for without installation. So it's one of the things that we really want to do because we're in this area. We want to make this very easy for building managers and owners to be able to afford. That's it.
A couple follow-up thoughts here. First, I want to thank my partners and colleagues. This is an initiative that I've been working on since 2018, and it's been a marathon, which I expected. I didn't expect a sprint, but today feels like kind of a watershed moment when we can get folks like you together to talk about this issue, and please go out and talk to others. Our contact info is on the back of your bundle of information, all 4 of your speakers today. Reach out to us if you want follow-up information. I can't tell you, when we first learned about Clearview Tinting and Tony, and I talked with him, the thing I appreciate more than anything is that it is driven sincerely and genuinely by an interest in protecting birds for our area, which I just have so much respect and admiration for you, Tony, and just what Metro Parks and Fish and Wildlife Service are doing. Inside your packet, let me just move this next slide. So we've established that dark skies are the safest passage for migratory birds. And it's really easy. The first step is just participating in Lights Out. And really, no matter what kind of building you have, as Yvette pointed out, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a skyscraper. The third page in your bundle of information is the very simple enrollment form. There's a list on the inside cover of your bundle these are buildings that are already enrolled. We do a timely reminder during spring and before fall migration, just to remind you, here's what you need to do. It doesn't really require that much effort except communicating with the occupants of your building or your staff to let them know what they need to do to turn those lights off. All this information, again, is in your packet. So we've talked a lot about the benefits to birds for participating in these things, and your homes too. I just want to emphasize again, it's not just your building. If you have big panes of glass at your home, chances are a bird has probably run into it. So treating your windows at home with these birds is a really important thing to do too. And I just think we're the glass city. We're manufacturing glass. There's such growing demand for bird-safe glass as a product. And as awareness like this continues through education and outreach to make more people aware there's an issue, the demand for that glass continues to grow. But for the average person at home in your building, you're not going to rip out the glass and put new glass. So Tony offers such a great solution to the dots. But the benefits for you that Black Swamp can provide, we're really good at marketing, not just the region to birders, but the collaboration of our partners. So this Black Swamp Birds and Business Alliance is a network of businesses in the region. For $250 a year, businesses can join. They're promoted exclusively through the Biggest Week website. But if you enroll your building, we add you to the Birds and Business Alliance and promote you in a number of ways. Again, exclusively on the Biggest Week website. If you visit the festival website, you'll see that we're dedicated not just to getting people here for the festival, but just coming to Northwest Ohio to go birding. We're teaming that with our colleagues and partners at the Convention and Visitors Bureau. We work very closely with Destination Toledo. They're one of our co-hosts of the event, and Shores and Islands, Ohio, to make sure that we're educating birders about how great it is, not just to visit during Bird Week, but to come back, visit the museum, and all the great things to do. And interestingly enough, we had a big, big vision for this when we started it, but we never dreamed that there would be positive real estate implications. So birders are buying spring birding homes to come, because they'll stay for a whole month, to take in the full breadth of spring migration, which starts in early April and goes clear through the first week of June. So these visitors are staying here for more than a month. So it's really significant. And again, you'll be listed exclusively on the website. And the Bird Observatory, in partnership with a couple of publication companies, we produced a Biggest Week Visitors Guide. There's a copy of last year's in these tote bags. I really want you to take the tote bags. But it gives you an idea of what, this is an almost 90-page magazine, and it's filled with information about the Festival of Birds, but lots of great, the biggest chunk of real estate in this magazine is about fun places to go in Northwest Ohio that don't have anything to do with birding. Our Visitors Bureau partners put that together. 20,000 copies of this magazine go out on newsstands from Toledo to Huron, and it's a free publication, and they fly off the shelves. It's very popular. The digital version, I think we peaked at around 60,000 views a few years ago, and all the websites are clickable. It's on a great platform to page through this digital document. Our Birds and Business Alliance partners are listed and promoted in this magazine too. And your support really helps us market Toledo as a bird-safe, birder-friendly city to all the visiting birders. Every hotel through this region is filled with birders. This lodge, where we headquarter the festival, it's a 120-room facility, a huge campground. I forget how many cabins, 15 cabins maybe. We fill all of it. And it's filled for more than the 10-day stretch of the festival. People are filling up hotels all the way down to Fremont, Sandusky. And Toledo is such a great place to promote to birders as a destination that the more support we get for making passage safer, the more appealing the city of Toledo becomes as a destination to birders. So thank you so much. please take the bundle of information. Did I mention that I'd like you to take the tote bags? And if you have any questions, I know my partners would be happy to answer any additional questions. And finally, let me just say, we've really focused a lot on the science and emphasize that, but you really need to come out and experience birding. You'll meet the happiest, friendliest people from all over the world. And birding is one of the fastest outdoor popularity. It's one of the fastest growing outdoor sports in the country. And you should come out and find out why. And if you're interested, get in touch with us and we'll make sure that you come out and have a really great birding experience. So thank you all so much.
I do have one quick question. If you have blinds on the inside, does that help or no, because you still get the reflection?
Yeah, so the question is if you have blinds on the inside, as Tony and Jessica pointed out, you really need it to be on the outside of the glass. If different times during the day, if you look at the outside of the glass, even with the blinds closed, you will still see a reflection of sky, trees, shrubs. So the product really needs to be on the outside to be effective.
And the blinds can help for lights at night. If it's easier to just close blinds or something, then that can certainly help with interior lights being visible outside. But yeah, as Kim said, for the most part, blinds aren't going to do a lot. They're not going to do a whole lot to help with the daytime illumination.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. That's an important point, that it will help in terms of blocking the interior lights, but it won't help break up the reflection on the outside.
Could you speak a little bit about the impact of Metzger's Marsh? And is there a point like 10 years now you think it might be like, hey, we need to get here because there's a lot of small growth there now?
You're talking about Metzger Marsh specifically, or?
Yeah, well, that's that park that was reestablished around too.
Yeah, Howard Marsh.
Howard, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I should really let Jay address that, but let me just talk about from a birding perspective. The Bird Observatory did the pre-construction bird surveys for Howard Marsh, and I'll let you talk about the details of the acreage and stuff, Jay, but that is the truest example of if you build it, they will come, not just birds and birders. The response from various complexes of birds was immediate and shocking. Just, it's the greatest success story. And birders immediately fell in love with that place. In a very short time, it's one of the most popular birding destinations now in this region because it's just so great. And Jay, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about
Yeah,
that.
we were just wondering, just kind of like the development of the habitat and how that is.
Well, it's how old is it? Maybe 8 years or 10 years?
Yeah, and
There's a
I mean,
lot of young trees there. I mean, is there a?
Yeah, so the long-term plan, so phase 2 of it just opened, I don't know, last year or the year before, very recently, and that's on the west side of Howard Road. Phase 1's been open a bit longer, that's the big main unit there. So yeah, there are some we did some reforestation areas that are on like the north side and then on the south side of the park. So that, it'll take a while for those trees to grow and the shrubs, but eventually, yeah, there'll be some pockets of trees around the outside of it, and some shrub lines kind of here and there. And that's, again, mainly for bird habitat. So all these warblers, there's a lot of resources in terms of invertebrates and flying insects that come out of the marsh, but warblers and things like to have places to perch and shelter. So trees and shrubs are good shelters, so they can kind of sally out from the shelter, forage out in the open, and come back. So yeah, the long-term plan, as the habitat matures, we'll have some trees and shrubs there. The main marsh units will just develop as marsh, so they'll end up looking maybe something like Maumee Marsh, in 10 or 20 years. They should be more diverse. Right now, it's a lot of cattail. I don't know if you're familiar with different marsh plants, but we want a little bit more diversity of habitat in there, but it's coming along really well. As Kim mentioned, there's a bunch of like really unusual birds that showed up and have started breeding there. Black-necked stilts, like maybe the only place in Ohio that black-necked stilts are nesting, and that population has slowly grown over the years. So yeah, it's a very successful project, just going from straight ag land to functioning marsh. And of course, it's really important because it's part of the whole marsh complex. So you have McGee, you have Ottawa Refuge and Metzger Marsh, Cedar Point. So Howard kind of helps fill in that gap between Cedar Point and some of those other marshes. But yeah, the whole coast, this whole area, lake area, is kind of all connected in that way.
Is there any plans to go up to like Monroe County? I mean, I can't help but notice 75 is right in that marsh corridor. That
There are-
probably destroyed a lot of that habitat.
There's already some really good, I believe there's a Nature Conservancy area, Erie Marsh, that's just up in Monroe County along the shore. We wouldn't go up into Michigan, but there are definitely there are already some other, like Huron Clinton Metro Parks a little bit further up toward Detroit has some really good marsh habitat. So yeah, really all along the edge going up into Michigan, up to Detroit, has a fair bit of protected marshland. But yeah, there's always room for getting more and improving what's there, for sure.
All right, if there aren't any more questions, I just want to thank you all again for your time and attention, your great questions, and I want to thank Yvette again for making this possible, and to my partners too, thank you so much. I think it really conveys how important this issue is when you have so many different agencies and nonprofits working together on one issue to make the passage safer. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have other questions. And I did want to, if you guys have time while you're gathering your things up, to go downstairs. I also want to brag about this lodge. It took a long time. There were changes in administration, but we finally said, we won't be able to headquarter the biggest week here if we don't do something about the glass, because a lot of birds were colliding with this lodge and dying, even during the biggest week of American birding. So that finally they put $70,000 in the budget, and that covered a huge expanse. But it's a great opportunity to see what these dots look at like in a big expanse of glass from the inside and the outside. And again, Tony and his company, it's supporting a local business too. So it's a great opportunity to go down and look at the dots. I will tell you that they're not invisible. For the most part, as you're walking up to them, you don't realize they're there. At different points during the day, you can see the dots from the inside, but they really don't take away from the aesthetic look of this. I mean, obviously the scenery here is very important to guests, but once you get your tote bag, we will.
Last question.
Yeah.
Is there, do they tend to eat from bird feeders, like in your backyard, or no? Or is
So this is a good question. He's asking about warblers specifically, or migrants eat from your backyard bird feeders. Some of them, like sparrows and things, will eat seeds under your feeders, like the white-throated sparrow that Jessica talked about. Those are pretty common under, like they're ground feeders. Warblers are insect eaters. They're far less likely to come to your feeder, but they'll come to bird baths, especially if the water is moving. Water is a great way to attract. This is a black-throated blue warbler. This is just one of the species. This is a male that comes through Northwest Ohio in spring and again in fall. So that's a great
so
question.
a bird bath would be typically like
Yeah, if you
3 feet off the ground or something like
Yeah.
that? Or?
if you want to attract warblers, then having some kind of a bird bath, even if it just has a dripper in it, it's a great way to try and attract warblers.
They can help us with
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.